This is season number 19 of Bass Talk Live with Matt Pengrack. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Aftco, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Pro Guide Batteries, Beatdown Outdoors, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, and Omnia Fishing. Hit them with the hook, Jeffries.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. You only get one post-classic show a year, and we are here. It is March 28th, Tuesday. Drove all day yesterday to get home from Knoxville and the Bassmaster Classic that was dominated by Canadian Jeff Gustafson. It was a dominating victory. I mean, he led it wire to wire. He's led 6 consecutive days on the fishery, dating back to the Elite Series win that he won. And what better way to break down the Bassmaster Classic? We'll bring him right in now because we got all sorts of things to break down about this. And we're just going to take a deep dive into what was the Bassmaster Classic on the Tennessee River, Tellico, and Fort Loudon, which I believe most of the action went down in Tellico. That would be none other than fishing tackle retailers, bass fishing historian, and tournament fishing enthusiast, Mr. Ken Duke. Thank you for jumping on BTL this morning, Ken, to break down the Bassmaster Classic.
Absolutely my pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me. It was great seeing you in Knoxville, as always.
All right. You mentioned meeting people, seeing people in Knoxville. Massive shout out to the BTL Nation, the BTL family that showed up in droves, wearing the BTL swag, wearing the Day 4 swag, bringing the color number 7 spooks, bringing stuff to talk about. I had a gentleman that gave me a swim bait. I had a gentleman that gave me a t-shirt. I had a gentleman that Jason gave me a custom painted crankbait, all sorts of cool little things. I will say y'all made Frank Scalish's day. He was afraid no one would show up at all to meet him. So the fact that he got a standing ovation at the Bass Tank booth when he showed up was awesome. That so many cool people with so many cool stories. And I think that is what makes BTL what it is the education level, the enthusiasm, the support, and the relationship with the viewers and listeners. And you're part of that too, Ken. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate it too. I had quite a few folks recognize me from BTL, and that's always really rewarding. I saw a message already posted on the YouTube feed here. A gentleman named Scott Klein said he saw me at dinner the other night and he did not want to interrupt my dinner. Scott, interrupt. I'd love to meet you. Love to say hello. So don't ever hesitate just because I'm sitting down or something. Always love to talk to the folks who watch BTL.
All right. How many classics was this? What number classic was this for you, Mr. Duke?
I'd have to sit down and think 20 some odd.
So you've been here. Do you remember what year was your first one?
Well, I went to some in the 90s just as a fan, you know.
Okay.
And then I've been to every one of them since the very early 2000s, and I've been to them as media since the late 90s.
So we're talking, I mean, we just talked about this off air, but we're talking like the Iconelli, Woo Daves, like those type of years were some of your first ones in a professional capacity.
Exactly. Okay. And my first one as been to a lot of them, and I always enjoy them. You know, the more you go to it, and Matt, you've certainly experienced this as well. The more of them you go to, the more they are a reunion, even more so than they are a business opportunity or a media opportunity. They're reunions now.
Initial thoughts and reactions from what went down on the Tennessee River.
A good derby, tight, some drama at the end. Not a lot of statistical significance in this classic. Not a big surprise that Jeff Gustafson won. I'm happy he won. I'll say this. Jeff Gustafson, I am expecting to be an absolutely spectacular Bassmaster Classic champion. Not everybody is, but he's going to be really good for BASS. He's going to be really good for the sport. He's going to be really good for Canadian participation. and he's just a really, really terrific guy. Charming, warm, gracious, just a super guy. And I'm very happy that the sport has him as a Bassmaster Classic champion.
All right, let's break down a little bit about how it went down, and then we'll get into some of the numbers, because it's what stuck out to me were the quote unquote superstars of this classic did not show up. There was not a single run by one of the, what I would consider returners, one of the guys that are searching for this as a final puzzle piece to solidify a Hall of Fame career. None of those guys were in the mix in this thing. Am I wrong on that, Ken?
No, you're absolutely right. You know, Hackney was not in the hunt. Swindle was not in the hunt. Palaniuk was not in the hunt. After day two, it was basically Gustafson's to lose, and of course he came close to doing that. But yeah, after day two, the drama was over. I thought he was going to run away with it, and then of course he went out there and only caught 2 fish on the final day, and kind of made it interesting.
Yeah, it was 18-8 to kick things off in the classic, and then you had what I would deem probably the tournament favorite. So it was very interesting. The two guys, the guy who had previously won before there, and then the guy from Tennessee, even though he's not from there, you look at, I think he finished 6th in the previous classic that was on the Tennessee River. He's familiar with that fishery, and that would be Brandon Lester, and they were 1 and 2 after day one. So you had your previous winner and then the guy. But you look at what I would say the superstar names. You're right. Hackney was already 6 pounds off the pace, down in 11th. The defending champion Jason Christie was in 12th with 12.6. You had, and then you had to really scroll down here. You had Scott Martin with only 3 fish for 7.7. You had Brandon Palaniuk with 2 fish for 6.3. Zaldane had 2 fish. Swindle had 2 fish for 4.12. So they're right there are what I would consider a lot of fan favorites that are, they're done before the thing even is a third of the way over.
So true. I mean, on a tough fishery like the Tennessee River, well, here's how you have volatility and a lot of movement in the standings. You combine tough fishing like they had. It was very tough fishing on the Tennessee River, but you also need big fish, and they don't have that on the Tennessee River. You need some 7s, 8s, 9s to really make it volatile. Like Conroe in 2017, that was a volatile tournament. Fishing's tough. There are some big fish in the mix. So suddenly a guy can get a limit, and that includes an 8 or 9 pounder, and he can move up 20 places in the standings in a day. Not so much here.
What's the theory again? What is your formula for how far you can realistically come from behind and win?
If you're coming in the final day and you trail by more than the weight of the big fish, you are pretty much done. And it proved itself true here. Because going to the final day, Gustafson had a 5.12 lead, which is roughly the weight of the big fish.
5.13 was big bass of the tournament, Luke Palmer. Yeah.
So it was his to lose. And he would have to really, really, really stumble like crazy. And of course he almost did. But what made him safe here was the fishing was so brutally tough and the fish were so small that nobody could make up the ground. But yeah, that's the standard. If you trail going in the final day by the weight of tournament big fish, it's going to take a historic comeback to beat you.
Which is interesting because we have had some anomalies over the past decade in the classic on the final day.
And it's exactly in the kind of places we're talking about, though, the places where fishing's tough. So a leader like Gustafson could stumble and only catch 2 fish. And they're a big fish. So you can make a massive jump. Gunnersville, Conroe.
Yeah,
right. But you can't do that at Tellico. You can't do that at Hartwell. You can't do that at Grand, probably. You can maybe do it at Grand, but the fishing is usually good enough. There are enough guys catching limits that it makes it all but impossible.
Final standings, and we talked about those big names would have been Palaniuk finishing in 48th, Swindle finishing in 44th, Zaldane 37th, Seth Feider missed it in 34th, Scott Martin in 33rd, A guy that we've seen play in past classics who I thought would be sneaky strong here is Arkansas Stetson Blaylock. He finished in 30th, and then some really cool stories of anglers who made the cut. Probably one of my famous favorite would be Lou Minetti.
Oh my God. Isn't that guy awesome?
Did you get to meet him?
I did. Just an amazing young man out of UNC Charlotte and lives in New Jersey, I think, but went to school at UNC Charlotte, now a graduate of that school. What a personality. What a big personality. If that young man can catch him, he's going to be a big star in the sport.
It was really cool. He had a whole group of friends and family there afterwards. And one of his compadres came up and were like, dude, you are missing the biggest story of the year. Why has my boy not been on BTL yet? And I was like, it's a really good question. And so I got to meet Lou, got his phone number, and we are going to have Lou Minetti on BTL to talk about his classic experience. He finished in 23rd, and I kid you not, Ken, I was talking to him about, and I said, hey, what was it like fishing? I think he was fishing out of a nitro that they gave him for winning the college stuff, because the whole story with that was what he was fishing out of, like a 20-year-old boat with like no functional electronics on it when he won.
Right. At least no electronics on the bow, and the seats are all torn up, and it's just just the kind of guy you'd like to see do well and make it a long way. So
he was trying to get all this stuff figured out in a 2023 boat with all that, and he actually had them take the forward-facing sonar off of his boat. I talked to him specifically about this for the Classic, because he went out and he said it was just screwing him up. He didn't know what the hell he was looking at, and he didn't want to get distracted about it. So he took it to the boatyard and said, get this off of the boat.
He also showed up at the Champions Night dinner in a bow tie. So I thought that was a stylish move too. But yeah, he's a very interesting young man, wildly exuberant. I mean, you love seeing that kind of passion and enthusiasm. If he can catch him, he's going to be a huge star. And even if he doesn't catch him, he's going to be a fan favorite.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool story. We have to go to 26th place, another competitor that I'm going to have on BTL within the next week and a half, and that would be one Keith Poche.
Yeah, Iron Man out there. He just comes off the MLF win. He misses practice and media.
He missed
day.
Some of it. I guess there was a day or two in between his MLF days that he went. So here's the deal. He made the Classic because he won on the Red River on the Bassmaster Open. He's also decided for some unknown reason to skip 2 Elite Series events, but still pay the $5,000 entry fee, ultimately assuring that he will finish last in the Angler of the Year and will not requalify following his second year next year on the Elite Series, but is still going to fish the remaining 6 Elite Series and 1 divisions of the Opens, but also is decided to fish the Bass Pro Tour, which he was qualified for. But the Bass Pro Tour, for some unknown reason, even though they are supposedly pro angler and all this, made a rule to where if you miss one day, you're DQ'd for the entire year, which I'm going to have an epic rant on that as far as anglers' rights and letting guys fish what they fish when they fish, because there was also some people in the Classic who were upset that they were letting Keith Poche do this. I think it's a tip of the cap to Bassmaster. Yeah, they fined him a little bit for missing media day and stuff, but I think if you can be at the boat ramp by takeoff time or want to skip days, that's freaking up to you. Do whatever the hell you want to do. You are not owned by that organization. I'm not going to get into the rant now because I can feel myself getting into that rant right now, Ken. Long story short, he won the BPT on Thursday, which was media day. He had to fish on Wednesday, so he missed the last practice day of the Classic, and then he drove an hour overnight and was like, hey guys, I'm here for the Classic, and just jumped in the freaking Bassmaster Classic and finished 26th.
Almost made the cut. That
first man out.
He's the Deion Sanders of bass fishing,
But he also pulled a massive power move by strolling into the Bassmaster Classic Expo with his BPT trophy, putting it on his boat,
Gator Tracks boat,
on his Gator Tracks boat, and signing autographs with his BPT trophy at the Bassmaster Classic Expo.
I loved it. It was awesome. I stopped by and said hello to Keith, and I should not say he's a Deion Sanders of the sport because I really don't like Deion Sanders, and I really do like Keith Poche. He's awesome. But yeah, what a cool thing to do. I mean, I was looking around for Keith and at media day, and then realized, oh my gosh, he's fishing. He's in competition. That was very cool.
Allegedly received $1,000 fine for missing media day.
You know, I agree that people need to be at media day, and I think a fine is probably appropriate there. So yeah, you know, you pay your dues. He's got plenty of cash to pay that with now.
You're more of an angler oriented individual when it comes to rules, bylaws, and what they can and can't do, right? Are you hey, if you can get to the lake and do what you want and are willing to pay your entry fee, freaking free for all, have at it, this is how you make your living type of guy, right?
Absolutely, I am. Yeah, I tend to be on the side of the anglers, and I think that the anglers have been abused and misused to a great extent over the decades.
I want to address this, Clay. I did say this. Clay said, I heard that an angler did a shoe shot on stage. Is that good for a fine? No, I don't think that angler should get fined at all for that. He was put in a situation, and I'll say this, by Mercer, by the fans, and by Bass, to where he just wanted to weigh his fish in. Someone else handed him the beer. Someone else suggested the shoe shot. And I think that he was fine with it. Got absolutely zero issue with how that went down. And the crowd absolutely did love it. The crowd absolutely went nuts when that went down. Now, whether that's the clip that you want to be, remember the classic for, it is or it isn't, but there was no premeditation there on that part. He was 100% pressured into that.
And, you see that a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of times on stage, the announcers, quite often cued by the production people in a truck somewhere off site, are being told to push these anglers in a certain direction. I remember seeing it in 2005 at the Pittsburgh Classic, when there had been a bit of a turf war between Jimmy Mize and George Cochran, and they're being pushed into saying things that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily do. They're being pushed toward creating controversy, or at least bringing focus to controversy. And you know what? If these guys want to do that, I'm okay with it. But I'm not excited about when the announcers push it, because that's contrived by the platform itself, and I'm not a fan of that usually.
And I listen, I'll say that, and then I'll follow that up with Mercer also did a great job when there was no one to weigh in on the final day, and he had 20,000 people standing there staring at him, waiting for something to happen, and had to make time for 5 to 10 minutes while those guys went back and got into their trucks on the final day. That's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, I did it. I actually got to announce or be the MC guy at an open, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. It was a situation where our main announcer had to work an elite somewhere, and he couldn't get over for the open, or the guy who was going to do the open was sick. So they said, who do we have who can do this? And somehow I got picked to do it, and I had a ball. It was awesome. And I had so much fun with it. It was Santee Cooper. It was a tournament that Terry Scroggins won. And I had the best time working with the Bass staff than Chris Bowes and those folks. But the toughest part, Matt, was to keep talking and keep the flow going when there was nobody in line. And you had to learn to pace yourself, so A, you didn't run into that problem very much, and B, if you did run into that problem, you had some filler. So I'm out. Of course, it's an open, which is a much more relaxed situation. Mm-hmm. There's not cameras everywhere, and so I'm quizzing the crowd and giving away bass caps and goofing off. The other challenge for me, Matt, was keeping my voice for 3 days after you're talking for 3 or 4 hours at a stretch. It's brutal.
It is. Like I said, we're just going through the final standings here and just getting some off the cuff stuff before we get into Ken Duke's analysis, breakdown, and numbers of it. I thought an angler who needed a he needed a good classic, a good showing to get some confidence and get back on track was none other than Brian New. I thought a top 20 for him, while it will probably not be remembered as an epic classic performance, a very important tournament for Brian New right now. A, to get back on track to make the Grand Classic. B, get a little confidence under his belt, put 13K in his pocket, and move on down the road. But I thought that you could tell that he was very relieved that he had a couple good bites on that final day.
Yeah, I really like Brian New. He actually lives in the town where I went to high school and middle school and stuff, a little town in South Carolina that also produced Davy Height, that area. And I'm a big Brian New fan, just a wonderful guy. And it's good to see him have a good event like that, as you say, cash a check and hopefully leave for the next Derby with some confidence.
It is also, I called him and then he called me back, and I have another BTL guest. We've got a bunch of anglers coming up. It's been a while since we've had a slate of anglers on the show. Brandon Card is going to come on, obviously, with the Bell's palsy. And then you look at how he started his year. He finished in 16th. He was a player in this thing as well. Very positive and hopefully on the road to full recovery with that. But dude, I mean, it's a surprising and amazing that he's, after his battle with meningitis and then the Bell's palsy, that he's able to fish this year and then 16th place finish in the Classic.
Wildly impressive. You know, you look at, and that's one of the things that maybe not everybody appreciates until you really think about it. You know, these guys fight all year to get to the Bassmaster Classic. And then if you're a Brandon Card and you're stricken with viral meningitis and then Bell's palsy and half of your face is paralyzed, you've got to wear an eye patch and put in these eye drops every hour or two. But you know, he's a warrior. He's out there. He's fighting for everything he can because he knows this thing only comes up once a year, and it's his chance to change his whole life if he can put 3 good days together. So hats off to Brandon Card for just being out there and doing so well.
Jason Christie left his mark on the Classic. So the final day, Ken Duke, I'm like I do every single year. I sit by myself in the top row in the rafters so I can observe the whole thing. And I just sit there for 3 hours and not with anybody, by myself. And I watch the entire Classic weigh-in until all the confetti has fallen and the stadium is emptying. I'm in the top row, and I was shocked at how loud the pop was when Jason Christie came out to give the trophy to Gussie. He slapped him on the back so hard that it was distinctly audible in the top row of the stadium. Did you hear that?
I didn't. I was in the media center when that happened, and I totally missed that. So I hate that I missed that. That's really interesting. What was that about?
It was, I think, about Jason Christie just being jacked up and wanting to leave his mark on. I mean, dude, I'm trying to pull it up right now. I don't know if anyone else realized this or anyone else saw this. I'm sure they had to. It was, I mean, he's got to have Jason Christie's hand imprinted on him.
That's hilarious. Now, I was sitting with Jason Christie in the media center before Christie had to go out there to hand off the trophy. And, you know, Christie looked relaxed. You know how it is when you're watching these guys after they've won, they're the defending champ. They're hanging around, you know, they're out of the hunt. They're just waiting to go out there and hand off the trophy. Yeah, I'd love to see that because I didn't know about it.
All right. I don't think you can talk because it'll talk over it, but I'm going to try to play this with audio. And I wonder if I don't know if they'll have audio on this version. All right, there it is. Entire screen, share system with audio. All right, let's see if you can hear it. Did you hear that?
Oh, I definitely heard that. That's hilarious.
Here, let's go back and watch it again. He gives a... Hold on, I got to get back to it. Add to stream. All right, here we go. We got to get back to this. Watch how hard Christie gives him a freaking shot right in the spleen region.
And Christie to do the handoff.
Just slaps the heck out of him.
But maybe it's I don't know anybody who doesn't like Jeff Gustafson. He's just it seems to me he's just about impossible not to like. So maybe there's some genuine affection there.
All right, you've done this forever, and we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, I want you to talk about this. What do you think it is that makes an angler universally well liked? Because there are several of them out there. I would like to know what your criteria is.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. We can both cover that.
First, BTL, since Jeff Gustafson is your 2023 Bassmaster Classic winner, obviously first Canadian to ever do it. Talking with fishing tackle retailers Ken Duke, breaking things down about Classic Week. When we come back, like I said, what makes an angler universally well loved, such as Jeff Gustafson, and then we'll also get into some stats and numbers from the Classic that might surprise you. It's BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top one on Strike King.
So I'm a big guy, a lunker, a two sandwich eating kind of man. And on behalf of all of those bigger, I gotta say it once and for all, it's bad enough that the fish look smaller in our hands. The last thing we should have to worry about is getting quality outdoor clothing that fits. Avco, any fish, any water.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. All right, welcome back. BTL on a Tuesday, talking with Ken Duke, fishing tackle retailer. Ken, what makes an angler universally loved by the media and competitors alike? What are some of the qualifications and criteria?
And I'm so glad you specified there, Matt, because there are guys there are a handful, just a very few guys who are universally respected by their peers. That's a really hard status to achieve because these guys are competing against each other, and there's a lot of jealousy sometimes. I think it's easier to be highly regarded by the fans because the fans only see a very small part of these guys, and usually they see these guys when these guys know they're on camera. They know they're being exposed, so it's easy for these guys to be on their best behavior then. But I think the guys who are universally well liked and respected, they're friendly, they're personable, they have a nice personality, outgoing, smile a lot, stuff like that. That goes a long way. It's the tricky part is, again, getting the respect from your peers and being universally highly regarded by your peers. And I think to do that, you've got to be really quick to help. There are guys on tour who have a reputation for being ready to help other guys. If a guy has a mechanical issue of some kind, if a guy has a flat tire on the road, if somebody's stuck on the water after dark because his engine won't start, the guys who are held in the highest esteem are ready to hitch up their trailer again and go looking for them. The guys who are respected are not hole jumpers. They're not going to crowd in on you ever. They're going to find other water. They're not going to move in on another competitor. They're open to share some information, not all certainly, but they're open to share some, and they're willing to maybe give a guy a bait, even a guy maybe they don't know that well. They'll say, "Hey, here's what's working for me. Give it a try." They don't sandbag. You can't sandbag over at MLF where everything is going down live and everybody sees exactly what you got. But there's a lot of sandbagging that can go on in the Elite Series, and the guys who are probably best liked are frequently the guys who are not sandbagging. And everybody kind of knows who's sandbagging, and they kind of make allowances for, he says he's got 12, he's probably got 14, that kind of thing. But those are the things that I think of when I think about the guys who are universally liked and well respected. What do you think?
I think all of that, but I also think you have to add, they're not going to get walked on, though. They're not going to let someone take advantage of them, because then there's a difference between the universally well liked and respected and, oh, this guy just has no confidence and we could do whatever. So there's also a little bit of edge to them as well.
And I think the guys who really have that level of being liked and respected, you have to have a certain level of success.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have to have won a time or two, or won a big championship, because otherwise you don't get noticed. You're not. Yeah.
Which Gussie has. He led the Elite Series event here, wire to wire.
Yeah. He's one of those guys, as far as I know. Everybody likes Jeff Gustafson, and I see no reason not to. The guy's accomplished, and now he's tremendously accomplished, and he's always been so gracious and warm and got a great personality.
Randomly, I had a one-on-one encounter with him at Media Day. I was going to my vehicle to leave, and the talk of the Media Day was, well, how could Keith Poche not be here? How are they letting him do this? There were some anglers that were upset over that, and I was flabbergasted at that. If I was an angler, I'd be like, I did have a couple anglers that were like, hey, if we'd have known we could have paid a $1,000 fine and not been at Media Day, then we wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? That's a slippery slope. But I think there are exceptions, and if you were in his shoes, I think you would hope that Bass would do the same thing for you that they did for Keith Poche. And if you want to spend the money and the time to go fish 2 tours, then I think you need to support the guys who are actually doing that. It's neither here nor there. But I'm leaving and I'm walking up the hill. So the talk had been about Keith and blah, blah, blah. And Gussie is going up to his truck. And I know Gussie listens to BTL. And we've had him on the show a couple times, but I'm not best friends with Jeff Gustafson. We're very just casually know each other. And I respect the hell out of him. It's just the same thing that everyone else said. He's just easy to like guy, right?
Very easy.
And I said Slugfest, and he goes, freaking hole poachers. He goes, all over my stuff. And it's just, there's no one else around. And I was like, I said that they're in there. He goes, and I'm not going to do the Canadian accent, but he said they're stacked. He said
they're stacked. I can do it for you. They're stacked, eh?
Yeah, they're stacked in the exact same spots where I caught them last year. He said the problem is that everybody from the previous elite, not everybody, there's a section of the previous Elite Series tournament who went in, they found they were stacked. The rest of the system in Fort Loudon and the Tennessee River, due to water level and lack of flow, made it fish extremely small. So that was the most productive area. And he was like, dude, I've had a couple anglers come up to me and apologize already that they'll see me in there the morning of day one because it's the only place you can get a bite. Now, this is where I want to have a conversation with you, Ken. And this is where it's a mind screw for me, because I don't know what is quote unquote right, what is ethical, what is competition. Okay, Gussie wins an Elite Series event in this exact same spot, these exact two same holes, a channel, the river, a rise that goes from 40 to 20 feet. People know about it. Now it's the Bassmaster Classic. It's a different field. It's a one-off event. It's a different year. How do you claim a spot? Like, how in your mind and based on the guys that you talk to, is that spot fair game? If it's been on Bass Live, you say, oh, well, so-and-so fished here. I'll buy. So now I can't fish that spot because everybody's had spot that they fished previously. Does Gussie have any stake to that? Is it BS that guys were going in and even checking that? Or is it, dude, get the hell over it. That's homework, just like it would be for any other tournament. And this is a different event, and we're all starting from scratch here. I don't know what is right and what is wrong in that scenario, Ken.
Well, I'm not going to say I know what's right or what is wrong, but I take your last option. Get over it. You shared where you caught these fish. It's public knowledge where you got these fish. You don't own the lake. It's a public body of water, and it is homework.
And he wasn't trashing anybody. He was just saying that it was going to be real. He did it in the most Gussie way possible. You know what I mean? He wasn't negative. He was just like, hey, it's going to be really crowded.
Yeah, because let's extrapolate that to technique. Somebody won a tournament on a lake with a deep diving crankbait. Does that mean you can't throw a deep diving crankbait next time? Hell no. You can go and do whatever is within the rules out there. And if somebody else had a faster boat or a better draw than Jeff Gustafson and they got to the spot before he did, then they have more right to it than him.
Even if the only reason you're there is because Gussie won there a year ago and it was on video.
As long as they went there in practice and discovered there were some fish there, I think.
And the only reason they went there in practice and discovered there were fish there was because it was on video from a year and a half ago.
So what?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, so what?
I'm honestly 50-50 on this. I don't know. That's why I ask you. You could make a case either way for this.
I think any angler who knew about that area and who knew what Jeff Gustafson had done
and did not check it
last time and didn't check it is unnecessarily hampering himself and is foolish. Make it a career error.
Okay. I'm on board with that.
And if I were sponsoring such a guy who decided to lay off it, just for that reason, I'm going to say, hey man, I need a better effort from you.
That's interesting. Because Zaldane posted a video on the practice day going past one of Gussie's spots. And he said, look, there's 8 boats practicing in this area where Gussie was as he drove past it. Almost like, hey, this is freaking ridiculous.
I'm not going to comment on that comment, but I'm going to say that you and I know how rare it is that a guy can go back to an area where he's already won and do it again. That's extraordinarily uncommon.
Yeah, I agree.
And if I were in that tournament and I knew where he had won and what he had won on, I would definitely check the area out, but I would be shocked if they were stacked in there because I would assume that everybody else was also wearing them out. And I'm not talking about just people in the tournament. I'm talking about other anglers.
Yeah. I know there were some anglers that I talked to that stayed out of there because that wasn't they're like, I never would have checked it. It's not my style. I don't fish like that. And it's not my stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird deal, especially now with live and video and all that. Like, I mean, I feel like if you're putting it out on your own YouTube channel, that's fair game to the world, because you're the one who's decided to do that. I mean, that's your decision. But I mean, when then it's part of a production and you had absolutely nothing to do with it, then I think there might be a little bit of gray. But I also see the research new year. I mean, what is Tommy Biffle supposed to have every stretch of bush that he's ever put a freaking bug in since 1975? You know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line then?
You can't. I don't think it's fair to
I mean, are you not allowed to go up into the Elk River in the spring if there's ever another tournament up there because Edwin caught 27 pounds out of that? I mean,
no, you can't expect that. That's unreasonable, and it's not fair. And I think that I think I wouldn't call any of those guys hole jumpers.
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
All right. I noticed, Ken Duke, let's get into the book. Let's get into your book of wisdom, knowledge, and statistics. How long has it been since there was a classic that was one rod Todd? The exact same bait, the exact same lure for every fish that came across stage, and the exact same color. And I know he threw a little Nico rig and had a couple different moping setups, just as far as little tweaks. But I mean, every fish that came to the scales was caught on that Z-Man's plastic and that
jig head.
Yep. The Canadian jig head with the little 1/0 Gamakatsu in it.
Right. I think that there have been 4 previous classics that were basically one bait classics. And you start with the very first one. Every fish that Bobby Murray brought to the scales in the 1971 classic was caught on a white Zorro aggravator spinnerbait. In 94, I'm pretty sure Brian Kirchhoff brought every fish to the scales that he had caught on a red shad culprit worm, a Texas rig. In 98, pretty sure Denny Brower caught all his fish on that unnamed tube that he was pitching and flipping. And in 2010, I think Kevin Van Dam brought about everything to the scales, came from a Strike King Red Eye shad. So this is very unusual, but I think it has happened before. And I'm sure it's happened a couple of those times. I'm absolutely certain were one bait deals.
As far as cashing in on it, do you feel like it's harder to cash in on soft baits for classic wins or hard baits for classic wins? Because especially since the transition from summer to early season classics, it seems like the winning bait, and I'm just thinking back through my head. I mean, we're talking an FF minnow, we're talking a homemade underspin, we're talking a mop jig, we're talking a Demiki rig here, are not as sexy as a lot of the baits that were being sold in the Bassmaster Classic Expo.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That's a really good question. I like that question. Had never considered that question. I think that it's probably harder to cash in on a soft bait. And I say that because a soft bait is going to be easier and faster to knock off. And there are probably more similar soft baits out there than there would be hard baits. So I think that it's easier to cash in on a hard bait. But I'll also say that it's much, much more difficult to cash in on anything in 2023 than it was in, say, 1975. As anglers, we know now that there are no magic lures, and what Jeff Gustafson did with that Z-Man jerk shads, it wasn't all about that bait. It was about his ability to use his electronics.
Wait, you think it's harder to cash in than it was?
Oh yeah.
You think it was harder then to cash in than it was now?
No, harder now. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
You think it's hard? Okay. That's because I got that wrong. It's harder now. I think it's easier now because watch this. In 1975, I would have to wait till the magazine came out or the newspaper came out or the news, and then I would have to go to said store and request said lure. Watch this. I can go boom, boom, share. There's your Smeltinator jig head right there. I mean, I can just click on it and I've got it to me the next day. I can do the same thing with the Z-Man.
And you're right about all that. But let me throw in some other factors. Factor one that I think is enormous. In 1975, the general angling public was not nearly so well educated or well versed in angling techniques. They thought, and I was one of them, they thought that Fleck weed weight or spinnerbait that was a big factor in that 75 Classic was a magical lure, was different, was special. And now we know that lures are not so different, not so special. Maybe that although that Z-Man jerk shads is a fabulous bait, absolutely a superior product, but maybe I can make the same pattern work with another bait. And maybe it's as much about the electronics and my ability to find fish as it is about the bait. Another thing is this, and it's not so much the situation here where you have a big company that has a lot of production like Z-Man. They're going to be able to maybe keep up with demand here. In 1975, but let's look at an Andy's Custom Jigs in 2016 when Edwin Evers won the Classic on Grand with 29 pounds in the final day. There was a tremendous demand for that bait, and Andy's Custom Lures couldn't keep up. Did he cash in? He sold every one he had, but did he really cash in, or did every other jig company on the market eat his lunch by having bigger, faster production and better outlet to retail and so forth? In 1975, and your point is deadly accurate. In 1975, you either found out about it in the newspaper on a Monday morning, or more likely back then, you found out about it when the magazine came out. Well, guess who had plenty of time to get production running?
Oh, the lure company. So by the time it hit the shelves, they had them all.
They were there,
packaged and classic winning bait, and then when you head to your local tackle shop to pick it up, boom, there it is, Bassmaster Classic winning bait. You read about it that morning.
There it is. I mean, Z-Man may be able to keep up with demand here, but can that jig head company keep up? Because they're not as big.
I believe the people who created the Smeltinator, they're out of Canada, and he fished the Open on Cherokee, and I launched next to him, and he's like, "Hey, I do the jig heads that Gussie uses," and he's like, I said, "Yo, I need to get you on the show." I think it's a pretty small company, a pretty small deal. I mean, I think that was the guy who fished the Open, who like invented it, and him and his brother or something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
And their last name is also Gustafson, I think.
I don't know.
So they're likely family. I'm guessing, this is just a guess, I'm guessing that they're not a terribly large company, and while there may be great demand for their jig heads, they may be really challenged to keep up. And if you're really challenged to keep up, if you can't meet demand, guess what? Somebody else is going to slide in with something very similar.
Yeah, and it's real hard because it's just a jig head. I mean, it's obviously a very it's a very is that a correct, anatomically correct jig head? It holds the bait right. It's got I think it's got a Gamakatsu hook in it. It's got, realism. It allows that line tie so it can be a completely horizontal bait, but it is like, you can't put a patent on a jig head like that. I mean, it's a jig head. So what do you do there? Do you go the route that Ron Davis went? And it's ironic that he went to Z-Man for, skirt and stuff material. And then when the demand got so big, you're working with and selling. What do you do with that? Do you just sell as many as you can, as long as you can? Like, how do you maximize that as a small company who's got a jig head that everybody wants right now?
I won't mention the particular small manufacturer, but after a similar situation where his bait was an instrumental part of a classic win, he was a small company. The guy told me he got an offer of $1 million to sell it, and he should have. And I don't know what this company is like. I don't know what they're worth. I don't know, but I guarantee you they've never had publicity like this. And I would encourage them to accept the best offer they get in the next week.
Said Ken Duke from Fishing Tackle Retailer.
Because they're just not going to be able to meet the demand that's going to make it really, really wildly profitable for them. They're going to sell everything they can. They're going to try to scale up. They're going to employ 25, 30 more people maybe to make these things. They're going to order more from China if they're made there, whatever. But they're not going to be able to match what the big companies can do. The big companies have far fewer barriers to entry. The big companies can make them faster for less money. They can make them just as well. They can perhaps copy them almost exactly. I would cash in now.
Fair enough. The other thing that stuck out to me in the top of your mind, can you remember just multiple tournaments in professional fishing that were won by the same guy out of the exact same areas in separate years?
I have to go back to Robert Lee when he won 4 bass events on the California Delta. Bass was going out to California for, the highest level events at the time, whether they were invitationals or whatever they were calling them. And Robert Lee won 4 of them. They were like every other year. And when they went to the Delta, he would just win. It wasn't a question of who would win, but just a question of by how much. He was unbelievable. And I know he fished a lot of the same areas, but he had methods that were different, better than some other guys were using. And he taught everybody how to fish the Delta at that time. But yeah, I think he did it. Of course, that wasn't on nearly as big a stage as the Bassmaster Classic. I'm actually quite surprised that Gussie was able to go to the same area and fish the same techniques to win. I'm almost shocked that he didn't have a lot of company there.
Initially, I thought, well, this has to be the only tournament that's been won, the only classic that's been won exclusively on smallmouth. Not the case, though.
Not the case. I'd have to do some checking, but I think Woo Daves had all smallmouth in 2000. Van Dam in 2005. It's been done.
Is this
Bo Dowden had almost all smallmouth in 1980, but he did catch a 6-pound plus largemouth on the final day.
Is this the second classic that's been won using second consecutive classic that's been won using forward-facing technology where almost, I would venture to say, almost every single fish was seen before it was caught?
Yes. Yeah. And if bass keeps going to, well, I don't know when this might stop. I don't know when.
With this time of the year and where it is,
Yeah.
I mean, you would almost have to go to Florida.
Yeah, you'd have to go to Florida, someplace where it's
and
really
then someone
shallow
would
and a lot
win
of
it in
cover.
the Rim Canal on a Demiki rig. It's ironic.
probably
Think
right.
about this, Ken. Think about this. Think about everything that's out there. You walked around that expo, and the biggest tournament in the sport for 2 consecutive years has now been won on a lead-headed jig and a straight-tailed piece of plastic. The exact same thing that guys were fishing 50 freaking years ago.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about a plastic
In a roundabout
worm,
way.
yeah, that's one of the interesting things about the Classic in a sense. For the first 11 or 12 years, the Classic was a fall event, and so you saw a lot of spinner baits winning, and then it moved to the summer from like 83 or so until 2005. And you had a lot of worms and stuff winning and some jigs. And then since then, it's been a late winter, early spring event. And every time you change the season and every time you change latitudinally, of course, certain baits come into play. And that's an interesting thing to me. But then again, forward-facing sonar has been as big a game changer as anything else I've seen in the Classic, certainly over the last couple of years. It's we look at locals, and until 2007, no guy from the state where the Classic was held had ever won the Classic. And Boyd Duckett, living in Alabama, won on Lay Lake that year. And it wasn't too long after that there was just a string of state residents winning championships. So you had Randy Howell in 2014 on Gunnersville. You had Casey Ashley 2015 in South Carolina. You had Edwin Evers 2016 on Grand. And the electronics that have come along since then have taken away so much of a local's advantage. You know, guys used to plant brush. Well, what good is planting brush anymore? Everybody can find it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wire to wire, is that rare to win a Classic in wire to wire fashion, or is that surprisingly common?
Well, it's happened 10 times now. Hank Cherry did it just a couple of years ago. So I'd say it's not rare at all. You know, you listen to a lot of the commentary that the different platforms offer out there, and they'd have you believe it never happens, but it happens about one time in 5. And that just shows you that they sometimes don't know what they're talking about.
All right. I've been excited to talk about this the whole show, and I saved it till kind of the last little segment. Red Crest, Brian Thrift, took place a couple weeks ago down the road at Lake Norman, fishery where the ease to get bites was incredibly easier than the Bassmaster Classic, but still won by a local. Major difference between Red Crest and the Classic is Red Crest, when they weigh their fish, the other anglers know what the leader has. So when they knew that Thrift was catching it with what was on it, you saw the Berkeley coal shads or whatever it is come into play. You saw the bag drafts, the glide baits, the river, the smallmouth. Now we're hunting for 4-pound spots. Gussie assumed that he was getting his ass handed to him when he had 2 fish. The rest of the field assumed that they were getting their asses handed to him because Gussie had such a big lead and the coronation ceremony had already started. So therefore, Gustafson spent the whole day he tried to stay positive, but he spent the whole day thinking he was losing the whole thing, while everyone else spent the whole day thinking they were fishing for second. Had they been able to see Bass Tracker, known what in the hell was actually going on, you would have seen a lot more intensity from 2nd through 10th and a lot more stress and anxiety of needing one more fish from first place for Gussie, especially for those last 2 or 3 hours. And I think that would have made a dynamic show.
I'm right there with you, man. I think that I like it. I like Score Tracker, on the MLF side. I think it adds a lot of great elements to the tournament. Can you imagine a football game where you're going down the field, you don't know if you need a touchdown or a field goal? It would be stupid. And now that we have the technology to do that, I think that that should be used. I want to see these guys adjust and strategize and adapt to what the other anglers are doing. We've always said that the tournaments are not really about angler against angler. It's about angler versus fish. Well, now we can add a new dimension. Why doesn't Bass do it? I think they should. I think it's a little bit ridiculous not to do it. I don't know if they'll ever do the immediate weigh and release, but obviously that's the better conservation plan. Anybody who says it's not is
then why do they have limits where you could legally go out and harvest fish, Ken?
Because people deserve to be able to eat the fish. I'm talking about preserving the life of the fish that you plan to release anyway. If you're going to release the fish, give the fish the best possible chance and release it immediately. Don't drag it at 75 miles an hour across the water, drag across the stage, have some dude lift it up and have a bunch of people take pictures of it while he's holding it for 2 minutes out of the water. I mean, you're either serious about conservation or you're not. Pick one. And Bass is not serious about conservation when it comes to these tournaments.
I'd have to disagree with you there. We could dive into that the next show, Ken.
Am I going to go into timeout again?
No, you're not into timeout. You're fine. But we can dive into that the next time.
Okay. All right.
Because that's a whole show. We'll get Gilliland in here. It'll be Royal Rumble.
I have tremendous respect for Gene, and I would like the opportunity to ask him a few questions if I'm on with him.
Okay. We'll see what we could do there. I'm
gonna put my old attorney's hat on.
That I think people forget that you do. Are you still?
No.
No.
I'm recovering.
You were an attorney for a long time. Are you good for one more short segment? I want to get into the expo. You are fishing tackle retailer. There was a ton of fishing tackle at that expo, and kind of get just some quick synopsis of your thoughts on the expo.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, Ken Duke from Fishing Tackle Retailer. We'll talk about his thoughts on the very well attended, record-setting attendance this year, 163,914, which I think you have to they got to figure out a way to count the doubles, because I know I had one buddy who smokes, and he was like, man, that guy clicked me every time I went out for a cigarette, so they got me for at least 9 one day.
I've been counted at least 7 times at classics, and it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. The numbers they throw out are not even remotely accurate.
Was it packed? Yes. Was it incredible? Do I think it was probably the most attended classic? Yes. Could you tell if 163,914 or 163,913 were there? That's up for debate. It's BTL on a Tuesday. Ken Duke, Fishing Tackle Retailer, will be back right after this. Shoreline Boat and RV, dock rash, storm damage, collision repair, that deep scratch or gouge from trying to access that secret creek. Shoreline Boat and RV can get your prized possession back in mint condition and looking good on the water, fast. All repairs are done in-house, so they're able to get your boat or RV back to brand new, quickly. All Shoreline's work comes with a rock-solid warranty. Find out more at shorelineboatandrv.com. Kansas City, Austin, and Tulsa.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, you just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the cliffhanger worm and the ramtail craw, great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves the house without a pocket knife, and Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for everyday carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips, so if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Welcome back, BTL on a Tuesday. Ken Duke, fishing tackle retailer. Not a better guy to talk about what he saw and was impressed with or not impressed with or thought looked intriguing. Tackle trends, tips. The Classic now, Ken, seems like it's almost like a little bit of a mini ICAST. We've had this before, but it seemed a trend. Probably started, I would say, 5-6 years ago. Where companies said, hey, if we do a product release at the Classic, we could separate ourselves from the product release that typically goes out in July. We can have our anglers fishing it in the Classic, and we can do a bait that they will most likely be using and get a little bit more bang for our buck and separate it. Now it seems like it's 50-50, or that's kind of the standard as far as releasing stuff at the Classic.
I think you're right about that, but I think that it may have begun even earlier, Matt. I remember Humminbird introduced 360 at a Classic. It seems like quite a long time ago. And there's one interesting thing to me is a lot of these anglers will have I'll call them custom baits that are being made for them. And if they have a good tournament and can give that bait a boost, then the bait gets made. But if they don't have a good tournament and there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm back at the office for the bait in the first place, maybe that bait never gets seen by the public. That doesn't happen a lot, but it happens some, especially among some of the smaller companies. But yeah, it's a great time to introduce new baits because you get a test run at selling them too. The Bassmaster Classic Expo is the world's largest consumer bass fishing show. So
you can buy everything. ICAST, you just look at it, and then you've got the same little piece of plastic that gets touched by 7,500 grubby media hands and pro hands. At the Classic, you could actually be like, I like it, I want it, I'm taking it home with me.
You're exactly right about that. I saw a lot of cool stuff out there. I actually bought a Mike Bucca swim bait because I really think he makes some great stuff.
Did you get which one did you get? I got one right here.
I should have gotten up and from my chair here and brought it in. I got about a 7-inch long glide bait in Golden Shiner, but I've got several Bucca baits. I've got some swim baits. I debated over getting the rat, and it came down to the rat or the glide, and I went with the glide.
I got you. I've been messing with one. I think this guy's here in Oklahoma. It's called the Biggs, I think. Chad Warren actually is loaning me this bait. He said, hey, give it a shot, see what you think about it.
Isn't that crazy? These baits are so expensive now, we're loaning them to people.
No, I purchased one at the Classic last year, and then I gave it to Kevin Ledoux as payment for room and board for the entire week at Ross Barnett because he booked the place. And he's like, hey, are you going to throw that? And I was like, no. And then he had it. And he's like, do you want it back? I was like, or you could just keep it and we'll call it even. And he's like, done.
That's awesome. Yeah. Baits, those boutique kind of baits fascinate me. I don't throw a ton of them here in Florida because especially like a rat or a wake bait, because it's hard to keep those away from an alligator if you didn't see the alligator in time. But, yeah, I want to throw them more.
Anything else at the expo that stuck out to you? Trends? Any trends?
Nothing special in the world of trends this year, I think. The joke I always have is that, yeah, right, rods are getting lighter, stronger, and more sensitive. Well, that's only been since the beginning of time. Has that been the trend in rods? Reels, they're not getting dramatically faster than they used to be. A couple of companies now have 10-to-1s. Cast King has a 10-to-1. Abu has a 10-to-1. Seeing some cool stuff out of Luz, of course, as always.
Luz has stepped it up. They've been doing some, and also, I mean, along that lines of lighter, stronger, and more sensitive. That's also my personal life goal in 2023 as well.
Some great stuff from Cashin, from Arc. Saw an interesting fishing line out of Cast King. They call it a tripolymer. It's supposed to be almost the same refractive quality as fluorocarbon, but it behaves and casts more like mono, and it floats. Less stretch than mono, but almost about as sensitive as fluoro. So, it might be a player, and they have Bill Dance on board to help promote it and endorse it. So that's not a bad thing at all.
Does it still surprise you, Ken, that, you've got all these bass fishing superstars, and they were all there. All the BPT guys were there. Kevin Van Dam, heavily involved in this year's Bassmaster Classic. Now, I know a lot of that was through his sponsors and their relationships with the event, the Bass Pro deal. He's on the final day coming in a NASCAR, hanging out of the window, throwing stuff, talking to the crowd. I saw him all throughout the expo. All those guys were there because the BPT literally wrapped up the day before the Classic started, just down the road on Cherokee.
Right.
Now, that being said, there was a mob scene at the Icons boat booth with Jacob Wheeler and those guys, everyone wanting to get a peek of the new thing. Now, that being said, the three longest lines, by far, without a doubt, unequivocally, and Jeffries always talks about this every year, are still Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston. And the third, because of where we were and who he is with that hat, oh my gosh.
Bill Dance. I mean, there's no doubt that Bill Dance is the most famous angler in the world.
And then put him in Tennessee.
Yeah, and then put him in Tennessee. And
classic.
Hank Parker lines are, I think the Hank Parker lines are behind only Bill Dance, and Jimmy Houston is right there too. I think I mentioned it on the show before, but when Zebco Quantum did a survey of Expo attendees in Knoxville in 2019, the top 4 most recognized names were in roughly this order: Bill Dance, Hank Parker, Jimmy Houston, Roland Martin. And Kevin Van Dam was next on the list, but he had half as many people recognize him as an angler as recognized Parker, Hank Parker, Jimmy Houston, and Roland Martin, and fewer than a third as many as were recognized Bill Dance. Bill Dance was at 80%. Parker, Houston, and Martin were at 50. Van Dam was at 24. Okay. And this is at the Bassmaster Classic Expo. Shows you the power of TV. And I'll say something that you're very young, so at least compared to me. And I don't know how many young people really understand this, but no one will ever be as famous. No one will ever again be as famous as the television stars of the 1970s. And that may sound like a weird statement, but in the 1970s, this is before cable television, before there were 500 channels to choose from. In the 1970s, there were 4 channels in most homes. You had ABC, CBS, NBC, and you had maybe a public television channel from your state. So if you were on television, people knew who you were. And the guys we're talking about here were television stars in the 70s and 80s to begin with. And that kind of legacy fame doesn't die easily. No one will ever be that famous again. No one will ever be as famous as Muhammad Ali and Alan Alda, for example, because Alan Alda was on MASH, the most watched television show in history. And Muhammad Ali was the heavyweight champion of the world. And they came along at a time when television was everything.
Final thoughts, synopsis as a whole, 2023 Bassmaster Classic.
I thought it was a really good expo. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for the reason we started the show. It was a reunion. I got to see Rick Clunn, who's a longtime hero of mine and now a friend, and I was thrilled to see him. I hadn't seen Rick in a couple of years. I got to see Bill Dance. I got to hang out with Hank Parker. You just don't get those opportunities very often. So it was a reunion, and I had a blast. I got to see my friend Matt Pangrack. I got to see Matt go off on a rant about me, just had me in tears laughing, and it was all done at my expense, and I loved it.
It was at your expense. I thought it was a very solid classic. I thought that that the fishing, the tournament was not set up. It did not set up or go down the way that it needed to be riveting on the water. You had a blowout right from, not from the start because it was, but the way that he had his 18, even though there were guys with 16, I almost got the sense of, oh, that's cute. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes out and he does it again the second day, and then it starts getting really tough, and it's over. But then it comes down to that final day. But then there was no Jordan Lee run. There was no voices speaking to Randy Howell to run to the back of Spring Creek. There were no massive, there was nothing. I mean, it was like everybody struggled. And then Gussie, and then you also knew that he had the 2, and based on the weights, there was no way it could be as close as it actually was, because you knew that smallmouth had to be 18 inches, which had to put it in the 3-pound range. So I thought that with what they were given on the water and the tough conditions, the Bass broadcast crew with Zona and Sanders and Such and Roddy and them, I thought they did a great job. Like, yeah, there are some audio issues at some of the points, but as a whole, I mean, you're talking about a massive amount of coverage and publicity that went out to people who were not exposed, not only through Bass Live, but also the FS1 coverage and then the Fox coverage. I went back and watched some of the Fox coverage, and it was really cool stuff, the way that, with what they brought in. I mean, that was on the Fox. Like, I called friends who didn't fish and said, hey, just turn on Fox. And they're like, oh, cool, that's bass fishing. I got to give Bass a lot of credit for that. I don't think people understand how hard the job that Dave Mercer has and what he does, from the takeoffs in the mornings to analyzing throughout the entire day to the weigh-ins in the afternoon and evenings and what's going on in his earpiece and how to keep everything flowing. That's pretty dang hard. And I think that he does an incredibly good job at that, and is not appreciated enough for how much he does throughout the entire week. Is that a fair assessment in your opinion too?
I think it absolutely is.
The Expo, like I said, I thought the Expo, I'll leave that to you. You are fishing tackle retailer, and it was primarily that, but I thought it was well set up. It was easy to move around. The only snag was kind of getting between the 2 buildings, but that's an issue that is, I mean, nothing is going to be perfect. I was able to walk from my hotel to downtown, which was maybe good or bad, to the Expo, to the weigh-in, and then walk back to my hotel by passing Neyland Stadium and walking through the campus of UT, all within a 15-minute radius. Also, the launch was right there as well, within walking distance. It's a great venue for a Bassmaster Classic, and the people showed out.
It's pretty solid. I think that I don't like the way the Expo is so divided. It's on multiple levels of the Knoxville Convention Center and a separate building called the World's Fair Exhibition Center and stuff like that. And so I had a challenge finding people, and Bass had a really pretty good map to give you, but it still was a lot of moving around, a lot of changing of rooms, and it seems like they should be able to open things up a little bit more. I don't know how much of it is Bass wanting to provide some exclusive spacing for their biggest and best sponsors, or what, but I would think there'd be a way to improve that. But and I don't like the idea of having to get a ride to go from the Expo to the weigh-in. But, as you say, nothing's perfect. There are very few venues where everything makes for a perfectly smooth spectator experience. Alabama, Birmingham is always a good one because you're just across the street from the weigh-in and the expo center, just across the street from each other. That's really nice, but not a lot of venues play out that way.
All right. Are you able to objectively give a grade to the Bassmaster Classic, Ken?
Okay, what are my components here? Am I judging the expo only?
How are we going to judge it? This is the last segment. How are we going to judge the Bassmaster Classic? Let's have some criteria, and then we'll give an overall grade. So one would have to be the quality of fishing. We'll switch this up, right?
Okay. Okay, and you're looking for my grade on the fishing?
No, we're looking for we're looking for our grading criteria of the Classic.
Okay, got it.
So I'll give one. Mine is quality of fishing. So now you give one that we're going to judge it all as a whole on.
Okay, facilities, expo and weigh-in facilities.
Okay. Coverage. How well the general public and the attendees and the fans could digest what is going on. Just your overall coverage of the event.
Okay. I think we have to judge it on the basis of attendance. So let's throw attendance in there.
And yeah, and if you guys have anything on the instant feedback that you think needs to be in there as one of the components of how we're judging it. So far, we have the quality of the fishing facilities, the coverage of the event, live attendance. Excitement factor, because there are some. I think you have to throw that in there. Now, that could go under quality of fishing, but just as a whole, I think there are let's put it under defining moments. How does that sound, Ken?
I like it.
Okay.
And for anything we didn't grab here, anything we didn't include, let's just call it intangibles.
Okay.
And leave it at that. And I've been tallying as I've been going here. I'm gonna do the math now.
Okay. Quality of fishing, the facilities, expo and weigh-in facilities, coverage of the event, attendance of the event, defining moments during the event, and then intangibles.
Okay. Do you want to do scores for each of those categories, or we just want to do an overall score? Because I have now, well, I've got my overall score on a scale of 5, and I give it a 3.5 out of 5. And to do that, I graded every aspect we talked about there. For fishing, I gave it a 2. For facilities, I gave it a 3, which is average. For fishing, I thought was below average. And I'm comparing against all possible fisheries, so I'm comparing it against, what it would be like to hit the Kissimmee chain at that time of year. For facilities, I give it a 3. I thought it was fairly average overall. For coverage, I gave it a 4, obviously better than average.
Mm-hmm.
For attendance, even though I think their numbers are wildly inflated, I gave it a 5, perfect score of 5. For excitement and defining moments, I gave it a 3. Which again is an average score. And for the intangibles, all the stuff that's hard to quantify, I gave it a 4 for a total score of 21 out of a possible, out of a possible 30. So that gives it a 3.5, which is pretty good.
All right, let me do mine then. I got a 2 for the quality of fishing. Which isn't really isn't anybody's fault. It just
it is.
They weren't freaking biting.
But it is.
How?
When you go to the Tennessee River, it's not going to be on fire. Nobody's going to catch 30 pounds. Nobody's going to catch a 10-pound bass. It's not going to be lights out. When bass, and this I'm dating myself here, and I'm going back to the inception of the Elite Series. When Bass said, okay, we're going to take the best anglers and take them to the best waters at the best time of year. And the very first thing they decided to do under that umbrella was schedule the Bassmaster Classic for the late winter and early spring. The plan was we're going to see big fish come across the scales because these are the best guys and the best waters at the best time. And you'll recall the very first tournament they had under that umbrella was the Classic on the Kissimmee chain. And the first day, all the records got broken. Preston Clark comes in with an 11-pound, 10-ounce bass to break a 30-year-old classic record for big fish. They have abandoned that, absolutely abandoned it, as though they forgot it, which is entirely possible at bass. Not a lot of institutional memory going on there. So it is their fault. It is their fault. They can pick better fisheries. They choose not to because the better fisheries won't pay them to come there.
Okay, fair enough. So 2, quality of fishing. I am giving the Facilities Expo and Weigh-In a 5.
Wow.
There is nowhere else. Name another venue where you can stay, play, watch, and cover the weigh-in, the expo, the launch, and everything, and have it all there in once, and it's all in ease to get to.
Excellent point.
It doesn't exist. Like, is maybe the launch and stuff is awesome here. Like, is it Green Pond Landing? No, but you also don't have to wait for an hour to get into Green Pond Landing, and then you're 30 minutes from where you stayed and 20 minutes from where you can eat breakfast and have to drive back to the expo. Like, all in all, like, this is the one-stop shop for the Bassmaster Classic, and that's a 5.
I don't know that it's a 5.
How is it not a 5? You gave it a 3, right?
I think the expo facilities are a challenge because there's so many different rooms and they're remote. It's hard to find things in that place for me.
Okay, I should give it a 5.
I probably should bump it up to a 4, but you give it a 5.
That's fine.
Between the two of us, that's fair.
Coverage of the event, I give a 4. Like I said, the thing was on Fox, the Fox. They did a great job of covering it on that. It was on FS1. That's the vast majority of people are going to watch, see it, be impacted by it. That coverage was great. And you know how hard it is to cover an event where there's, at noon on the final day, there's been 20 fish caught by like the top 25 anglers. Like, that's just tough.
Yeah.
Attendance, the live attendance, I gave that a 5. It's well attended. Defining moments, I gave a 1. There was no defining moment in this classic. There wasn't even, I can't think back to this classic of a fish, a lost fish, there just wasn't a defining moment.
I was going on, because the other element, you labeled it defining no moment, but before we did that, we called it excitement. And I thought there was some excitement on day 3, and it was it was a relatively close finish. It was under 2 pounds. The average classic margin of victory is like 4.5 pounds.
Right. But there still wasn't a real feeling like anyone was actually going to catch him. It got to the point where it was like, oh, there's some guys that are in the ballpark of catching him. But then once he caught that first one at noon, or the second one at noon, he caught that one at 9:30. Then that kept him ahead. Otherwise, Canterbury would have passed him. Then he caught then he caught the other one at noon. And he just always stayed a little bit out of reach on that final day.
What I gave it a better score. You give it a 1. I gave it a 3. I gave it a better score because, frankly, because Jeff Gustafson won. And I think Jeff Gustafson is going to be really good for the sport and really good for Bass. I think Bass's prayers were answered here. Mm-hmm. You don't always get a classic champion who has the potential of that guy.
I agree. So, like I said, it's not an indictment on any individual or who won. It was just there wasn't the I lost a 10-pounder in a treetop Randall fart moment. There wasn't a Jim Bitter winning fish squeaking out. There wasn't a 6-12 through the mat that was under the boat by the time he set the hook with Boyd Duckett. There wasn't a Jordan Lee 27-pound flurry or a 6-pounder in the back of the creek for Randy. Dude, think of all these moments and that just didn't exist in this event.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Now, hey, you're going to the last category here, which is intangibles. Mm-hmm. And right now we have the same score.
We really do. Have you been tallying my score?
I've been tallying your score.
Really?
So let's see what you have for intangibles. That.
Yeah. And explain exactly. I've got my number down here, but for the listeners, what are you calling the intangibles?
Oh, it could be anything. For me, one of the things I'm thinking about is the fact that I saw so many people I really enjoy there. The fact that I saw so many fans and got to visit with them. I had a lot of people come up to me and talk to me about being on BTL or the podcast that I'm doing now. And that was just really rewarding. Seeing my friends like Matt Pangrak and other folks there, that's a big deal to me. Running into Bill Dance, Hank Parker, David Fritz, visiting with those guys was fabulous. Bob Cobb. I mean,
oh yeah, that was cool. I was
come
able to
on.
walk up to Bob Cobb and say thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate what you've done.
exactly.
I've got a 4 for intangibles, Ken Duke.
We are tied, Matt Pangrak.
Are we really?
We both gave it the same exact overall score. We
That
had
was not planned, I
differences.
promise you.
No,
I mean,
because
I have
didn't
them
know
all
we were
written
gonna do
down
this.
right there
Yeah.
as we did it.
We both give it a score of 3.5 on overall.
That's a strong classic, Ken.
It is. It is. You know, it's a pretty good classic. Pretty good classic. But still 3.5 out of 5 is no better.
Yeah,
than
but
a
I
B.
think we're also, I mean, I think we're also maybe a hair jaded.
Well, I'll say this: the categories that I downgraded, fishing quality,
Defining moments and fishing quality were the only ones that weren't a 4 or a 5 for me.
right, and those are not as salient for your experience as an attendee. You know, fishing quality doesn't affect you or me.
Yeah.
So I think we had a better experience than our score. But when we do factor all these elements in, it was left wanting in a few particulars, and fishing quality was definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as an overall experience, I really enjoyed the Classic this year.
All right, hit everybody as we wrap this up, hit everybody with, I'm way behind on the Big Bass podcast. I'm not going to lie, Ken Duke. What is out there now for people's listening pleasure?
We got tons of stuff, Matt. And this week, as a matter of fact, at midnight last night, we launched our latest edition, which is all about Roy Greer and an April Fool's joke played by Sporting Classics magazine back in the late 1990s. So I hope everybody will check that out. But we got some stuff out there. It's about big bass. It's about history. It's we got a recent show with Preston Clark, who caught the biggest bass in Bassmaster Classic.
I did see that.
History. Cool. Yeah. Preston's an awesome guy, a terrific guest. I do the show with Terry Battisti and Nathan Benson. We're having a lot of fun with it. We've cracked 900 subscribers. We want to get to 1,000, so the algorithm will start to help us out. And I sure appreciate the opportunity to plug it right here on Bass Talk Live.
Good stuff. Anything else you want to make sure you get in before we close out the Classic recap? I do want to mention we are going to really take a deep dive into the baits from both Red Crest and the Bassmaster Classic. Tomorrow, Polish Pete and Trevor from Omnia will be back on to talk all things about the baits that made the difference in the Bassmaster Classic this past week. I saw Pete from Omnia walking around the expo and talking to a bunch of different vendors and people who are able to get their stuff into their store. So using Omnia to really dive deep into the bait side of it tomorrow. I think we talked more about the ambience, overall experience, and some of the stats that went down. So what went on below the surface will kind of be tomorrow as we wrap up a regular week of covering the Classic.
That's fantastic, man. And one final stat for you, Matt, that I think you might get a kick out of. The Bassmaster Classic has now paid out over 53 years, approximately $27 million. Okay. 27 million over 53 years. That's almost exactly the same amount of money that Floyd Mayweather earned when he fought Conor McGregor in 2018.
And wow. Wow.
That was a stat I had to, when you were asking me to, come up with some stats and stuff, I thought that was an interesting one.
That was an interesting one. You got anything else?
Oh, let's see. Yeah,
I know you do. I know you do. I know you're going to call and be like, "Oh, I didn't get this in, but I didn't want to stop the flow of the show, and you had such a good close." So I mean, dude, don't leave any stat stone unturned.
Well, one of the questions we talked about very briefly before we went on the air was, obviously Jeff Gustafson didn't have a limit every day. He only had 12 fish, and that's actually happened lots of times. 24 times in history, guys haven't had a limit every day, but went on to win the tournament. And by far the toughest of those was 1977 on the Kissimmee chain. Rick Clunn won that tournament. It was his second in a row. And there was a 10 fish limit, and Rick only caught 12 fish over 3 days, the 10 fish limit. So he only caught 40% of what was available to him and still managed to win. So that record is probably never going to be touched.
It's good stuff. Speaking of Rick, I believe he posted something. I think he was just in the stands watching the Classic weigh in, wasn't he?
Sorry, I don't know. I ran into Rick on day 2, and I just cherish every moment I get to spend with that guy. He's awesome.
Yeah. Here's his Instagram post. Is it just me, or does he seem to have like kind of a second resurgence where he's like really appreciating stuff? He's active on social media. He's interacting with a lot more people. Like he seems to really be soaking it all in right now and imparting a lot of wisdom.
This is his 50th year on tour. I know that a lot of people will say he celebrates his 50th anniversary on tour in 2024 because he started in 1974. But if you're actually just counting the seasons, this is his 50th on tour.
I mean, here's a picture. The confetti's flying down. Rick took this picture, I think. It's a cell phone picture. He's in the crowd after all that, after winning 4, and it just says, and he captions it. He said, the greatest moment when you win the Bassmaster Classic comes the next morning when you wake up and realize that it wasn't just an amazing dream. Congratulations, Gussie, my friend. Well done.
I hope Jeff Gustafson can capture that and print it out and frame it, because that to me would be as cool as the trophy.
I think that's a good one to end it on. I mean, you're not going to get a better quote than that, are you?
Oh, sir.
All right, Ken, thank you very much. Like I said, I know you've been gone all week. You get back in the studio, in the office, and you got a lot going on, but you just took an hour and 36 minutes to help break down was it the 54th?
The 53rd.
53rd. I'm already looking forward to Grand Lake next year. I'm so excited about that one. I wanted it to be the 54th already. The 53rd Bassmaster Classic, won by Jeff Gustafson on the Tennessee River. Tomorrow, Omnia Fishing breaks down the baits that won and contended in the Bassmaster Classic. We will talk to everybody then. See ya.